maybe indefinitely, her sweet surprise novel audiobook. Chapter 8 to Chapter 15. Arielle is home. What's the meaning of this? Call her down at once. Mike, who'd just come home, was so infuriated that he almost burst a blood vessel upon hearing that Arielle was upstairs. I thought something might have happened to her, or she was with young Master Ziven. But she actually came back alone. Is she breaking off the engagement? What a juvenile brat. She is unsightly. Yet she still dares act out when young Master Ziven is willing to get engaged to her. How is the Grace family going to survive in Balin now that she has offended young Master Ziven? She has truly doomed us all. His wife, Scarlet Yule, shot the maid a glare. Go and call Arielle Grace down right this instance. She snarled furiously. Understood, madam. The maid instantly scampered up the stairs to get Arielle down. Willow quickly strode into the living room after hearing that Arielle was home, throwing Scarlet a look when she was walking. Only when Scarlet nodded did she walk over briskly and support Mike, who was foaming at the mouth. Dad, you've got high blood pressure, so don't get worked up. Otherwise, it'll be bad for your health. But how could Mike possibly calm down? Arielle left young Master Ziven at the altar and came home. How are we supposed to explain this to him? Dad, the matriarch of the Meyer family, Natasha Porter, wants our families to be joined by marriage. But after such an incident tonight, I am afraid that young Master Ziven won't possibly want Arielle anymore. After a brief pause, Willow continued softly. If the marriage falls through, she'll definitely be incensed. Dad, we can't allow the engagement to be called off for real. Despair was written all over Mike's face. As you said, young Master Ziven won't possibly want that brat, Arielle, anymore. So, how can the engagement be salvaged? Perhaps a faint blush stained Willow's face. Some remarks seemed rather inappropriate to come from her. She was the top socialite in Balin after all. Naturally, Scarlet understood her daughter's meaning, so she immediately blurted, "It is probably Mistress Natasha who wished for a marriage between the Meyer and Grace families. So I don't think young Master Ziven really likes Arielle all that much." What do you mean? Mike seemed to have perceived an underlying meaning. At once, Scarlet suggested, if you replace her with another daughter who is even more beautiful and elegant, young Master Ziven might even prefer that. Exactly. In that case, Willow can become young Master Ziven's fiancée in my stead. Arielle, who'd just come down, leaned against the banister as she stared at Willow with a half smile on her face. But Willow, aren't you dating young Master Zeke? Stop that nonsense. It is young Master Zeke who is wooing me. But I didn't say yes. Willow lifted her head. The moment she glimpsed Arielle's face, her heart abruptly jolted as panic swamped her. Arielle, why are you barefaced? You. Scarlet was likewise taken aback by Arielle's fair and rosy face without any makeup. How dare this wretched girl reveal her true countenance? Why would I put on makeup when it is late at night? And when I am about to go to bed? The smile on Arielle's lips faded away, and she gazed intently at Willow with an expression of naivety as well as bafflement. Willow, you used to tell me to put on makeup at all times, saying that a girl isn't presentable without makeup. But I now realize that I look even better without makeup. Mike was truly stunned. How could this daughter of mine, who loved caking her face with makeup, look so beautiful without makeup? Meanwhile, Willow's heart lurched. In the face of the suspicious look her father threw her way, she could only force a smile. Wasn't it you who insisted on putting on makeup? When have I ever said such a thing? After saying that, she swiftly changed the subject. Arielle, what exactly happened tonight? Where did you go? And why didn't you attend the engagement party? In front of Arielle, she was still the gentle and amicable sister, her concerned look underscoring her sisterly role. Inwardly, Arielle sneered. In my previous life, It was this hypocritical Willow Grace who not only ruined my life, but also killed Felix Meyer. Now that God has given me an opportunity to start over, I'll be letting down my new lease on life if I don't repay this sister of mine. As she stared at Willow, she blinked her innocent eyes. Willow. For some inexplicable reason, my mind started turning hazy, and I felt as though I was burning up after drinking the beverage you gave me. At this, she massaged her temples, looking as though she was still a touch weak at this moment. I was afraid that I'd embarrass myself during the engagement party, so I hurried home and took a cold shower. In fact, I am still a tad unwell now. As she dipped her eyes and gazed at Willow, there was a smirk in her eyes, but her lovely face was a mask of confusion. What exactly did you give me, Willow? Why did I feel so out of sorts? What substance would make a person feel as though she is burning up? Her mind hazy, and her entire person out of sorts. Micah's gaze alighted on Willow, for he couldn't possibly fail to deduce what Arielle had drunk when he was a man close to 50 years old. But why did Willow give such a thing to Arielle? Guilt welled within Willow as he stared at her, and she shook her head profusely. Dad, I didn't drug Arielle. How could I possibly? Blinking her big eyes, Arielle looked at her innocently. Willow, what do you mean by drugging me? What drug did you give me? I am just an 18-year-old girl, so it is normal to be ignorant of many things. No. Similarly, she put on an award-worthy act at this time. What exactly did you give her, Willow? Micah's brows creased deeply. If Willow truly did something to ruin Arielle's engagement to young Master Ziven, I'll never forgive her. Dad, how could I possibly do that to Arielle? She must have drunk something else, and she is afraid that you'll reproach her, so she is pushing the blame on me. Willow's acting skills were superb, for a faint sheen of moisture blanketed her eyes in an instant. I am your daughter, Dad. Don't you know the kind of person I am? All at once, Scarlett wailed. Mike, Willow is the top socialite in Balin, so how could she possibly set her sister up? Furthermore, Arielle has always been a bad girl. Are you going to believe her accusations and condemn our gentle and filial daughter who has excellent grades and character? Willow had been perceived as a well-behaved girl ever since young, to the eyes of others. She was always gentle and obedient. Besides, she'd always been exceptional in both character and grades. Plus, after she'd attended Balin's high societal events a few times when she was 18 years old, the title of the top socialite in Balin promptly fell on her. On the one hand, it was because she was indeed very beautiful, and on the other hand, she was also multi-talented. She could play the piano and dance well. Her every single movement close to perfection. Mike shifted his eyes back to Arielle, who was standing at the landing, his gaze dubious. She is indeed stunning right now, but she has always been a problematic child. Not only does she play truant, but she also smokes and drinks. Besides, she is promiscuous, puts on heavy makeup, and she even ran away from home. It has a whole lot of problems that can't be salvaged by an exquisite and flawless countenance. At long last, he declared, Arielle, your sister won't ever give you anything bad, so it might have been a misunderstanding. Arielle smiled faintly, but the smile held no warmth at all. I've only ever smoked once in my entire life, and it was Willow Grace who deliberately led me astray, saying that it was fun. So I tried for a bit. Just like that. A photo of me smoking while having heavy makeup on and a few beer bottles around me inexplicably circulated all over the internet. Admittedly, I was indeed stupid during my previous life that I never once suspected her. Of course, I know it is a misunderstanding. How could I possibly suspect Willow of hurting me? After all, she helped me keep it from you when she taught me to smoke back then. She blinked her eyes as a silly smile bloomed on her face. If it weren't for her, you would be found out about it immediately. Dad. What did you just say? Shocked, Mike swung his gaze sideways. And he stared at Willow. Dad. I would never d*mnu. Arielle Grace. Is she purposely exposing me tonight? But why did she suddenly change so much? Is this simply a coincidental slip of the tongue? Or is this deliberate? Why does she feel entirely different tonight? Or am I reading too much into things? Mike. You know Willow abhors the smell of cigarette smoke. Do you believe she'd teach Arielle to smoke? Scarlett was gripped by the urge to rip out Arielle's tongue. In the past, Arielle Grace was so painfully stupid that she couldn't even speak properly. But she is now glib despite looking innocent. And every single word out of her was a trap. Why does it seem as though she is a wholly different person? Mike didn't know whether he should believe Arielle. Her change tonight has been so drastic that I am still rather lost at the moment. But most importantly, the engagement party has been called off. So young Master Ziven probably won't want her anymore. What should I do now? Out of the blue, Scarlett arched an eyebrow and stalked up the stairs toward Arielle. What's that on your neck? Arielle was indeed somewhat weak now. And she was merely putting on a front at this time. Furthermore, Scarlett moved too quickly. So when she realized that there might be marks on her neck, Scarlett was already gripping her collar. Scarlett didn't show her the slightest bit of mercy. Yanking hard, she bared Arielle's neck to everyone's gazes. A sneer flitted across her eyes. But she feigned astonishment and exclaimed, "Oh my God! Arielle! Why are there so many hickeys on your neck?" Failing to break free, Arielle was dragged down the stairs in a flash. Before she could explain anything, Mike had already strode over to her. How did this happen? As Mike stared at the hickeys on her neck and collarbone, he was so apoplectic to the point that his hands were shaking. There are already so many visible marks. So who knows how much more is concealed under her clothes? Willow instantly spoke out in feigned propriety, her face a mask of pain. Arielle, don't tell me you truly fooled around with random men. Then, she glanced at Mike, only to see that he was infuriated to the point that steam was almost coming out of his ears. Naturally, I've got to prioritize my father as a good daughter. How could you humiliate Dad like this? At this, Scarlett seconded her at once, snarling, Arielle Grace, how could you drag your father and the Grace family down like this? If young Master Ziven learns about everything you did tonight, he'll surely destroy all of us. You're simply making the entire Grace family pay for your promiscuity. That single remark had Mike abruptly blowing his top. Her promiscuity is truly going to doom me and the entire Grace family. You unfilial daughter. Seething with anger, he lifted his hand to slap her hard across her face. How do you know that the man who was with me tonight wasn't to young Master Ziven? Arielle's comment had Mike's hand stilling in the air, the slap seemingly losing its steam. Did you say the man who was with you tonight was young Master Ziven? Arielle didn't answer his question. If possible, I definitely don't want anything else to do with Ziven Meyer. But there are marks all over my body now. Judging from the attitude of this mother and daughter duo, they'll never let this matter go before getting to the bottom of it. I can't possibly wait for them to strip me bare before speaking up. No. Dad, it is impossible that it was young Master Ziven. How could young Master Ziven possibly like someone like Arielle? Why can't he possibly like me? Are you saying that I am not as beautiful as you are, Willow? This remark was wholly convincing after she de-washed the makeup off her face. Men were experts in judging beauty. And Mike wasn't he blind? Having no retort to that, Willow looked at Scarlett with red-rimmed eyes. All at once, Scarlett countered shrilly. Did you think we're all fools? Who is young Master Ziven? A prestigious family like the Meyers attaches great importance to their reputation. So why would he at this? She paused for a moment. She was someone of repute. So some words felt filthy were they to come from her mouth. However, She had no choice but to blurt them out. Why would he be so impatient and fool around with you tonight itself when it is such a crucial time? Why would he do something so risky to the point of calling off the engagement party? Then, she shifted her gaze to Mike, her attitude instantly undergoing a 180-degree turn. Mike, this wretched brat must be lying. Mike was at a loss as to who to believe. But upon further contemplation, he felt that Scarlett's words made sense. It is impossible that such a big shot like young Master Ziven would do something so reckless. Are you familiar with young Master Ziven? How can you be certain that he'd never do that? Arielle sneered as she pushed Scarlett's hand that was clutching her collar away. Young Master Ziven said he'll personally come over and explain things tomorrow. No, it is actually after dawn today. So, why don't we wait another few hours and see what he says? No way. This wretched brat must be planning to sneak away in the meantime. It is not like she has never done such a thing before. Mike. Scarlett was determined to destroy her now. I can't allow her any chances. Just her countenance alone has me wanting her dead 1,000 times over. Mike. This wretched brat isn't at all remorseful after making such a mistake. So you must beat her severely tonight. Otherwise, she'll never learn. Sir. At this moment, the housekeeper rushed in from outside. Panting, he said, Sir, young Master Ziven is here. Ziven Meyer is really here. Never had Arielle thought that her random stalling tactic actually came true. But why is he here at 2 in the morning? Upon hearing that Ziven was here, the entire Grace family abruptly panicked. All at once, Mike and Scarlett went out to welcome him. After primping for a bit, Willow hurried out as well. Arielle was the one who was feeling perturbed, and she hastily went back to her room while everyone went out to greet him. The moment Ziven climbed out of the car, the Graces who came out to greet him were wholly shocked. After all, there was a dampness that clung to him. His shirt and pants slightly wrinkled, making it obvious that they'd dried after being wet. Plus, his short bangs also appeared a touch messy. He was simply the classical picture of having been drenched in the rain. How did young Master Ziven end up in such a sorry state? Most importantly, despite his slightly pathetic state, his stately aura was still riveting to women. His majesty not at all undermined. Instead, his disheveled state added a touch of mystery and roguish allure to him. In fact, even men would be so shaken by his regal aura that they wouldn't dare look him in the eye. But how did young Master Ziven get drenched? Also, why did he come straight here without even changing after getting soaked? Young Master Ziven, why didn't you inform me before coming over? Mike was still shaking in his boots, although there wasn't a hint of displeasure on Ziven's face. Don't tell me young Master Ziven came over to seek recompense from us because Arielle didn't show up at the engagement party. The more he contemplated it, the more it seemed plausible. That wretched brat, Arielle Grace, has doomed us all. Scarlett didn't even dare utter a single word, feeling as though she wasn't too worthy to speak before Ziven. However, she kept pushing Willow to the front so that her daughter had an opportunity to interact with him. In the beginning, Willow was simply feigning demureness. So when her mother nudged her, she immediately put on a gentle and graceful smile. Nice to meet you, young Master Ziven. I am Willow Grace, the second daughter of the Grace family, she murmured. She'd already presented her most perfect profile before him, but he didn't even spare her a single glance. This took her aback for a moment. Is there any man in Balin who has never heard of my moniker as the top socialite? Young Master Ziven. May I know if Arielle is back? Ziven's voice was mild as he looked at Mike, but it sounded unquestionably imposing. Arielle is back, she is in the living room. Mike panicked, thinking, this is bad. Young Master Ziven is truly here to condemn us. Do come in and have a seat. Young Master Ziven. Nodding, Ziven followed him into the house. Yol trailed behind him. not giving Willow any chance to get close to him. Young Master Ziven hates women getting close to him. And Willow Grace is no different from those besotted girls who want to come on to him in his eyes. However, there was no sign of Arielle in the living room. That wretched brat actually dared to pull a disappearing act. Suppressing his fury, Mike ordered in a terse voice, "Have Arielle come down." The maid swiftly scurried up the stairs, while Mike hurriedly flashed Ziven a smile. "Please have a seat, young Master Ziven," he urged. Ziven remained indifferent as usual. Although his pants were still wet, he didn't seem at all out of place when he sat down on the sofa. Meanwhile, Willow was all the more enthralled at seeing the legendary young Master Ziven at such a close distance, his natural princely aura holding her captive. However, she tried making nice several times, yet his gaze never once alighted on her. Despair engulfed her. "Young Master Ziven, the soon-to-be young Mistress Meyer is here," Yol, who was standing beside Ziven, stated. Ziven's eyes narrowed as he stared at the girl who was descending the spiral staircase. The gazes of everyone else simultaneously rested on Arielle. But as soon as Willow spotted her, her eyes lit up, and her heart settled. Arielle came downstairs with her makeup on. As she'd done it in a hurry, it was all the messier, seemingly even uglier than her usual heavy makeup. Willow and Scarlett's taut nerves instantly relaxed. Conversely, Mike was stunned and abruptly jumped to his feet. "Why did you make a mess of yourself? Hurry up and wash the muck off your face. You were beautiful earlier, but you're simply unsightly now." What's her definition of beauty? She is simply hopeless. Nevertheless, Arielle walked over with a bright smile as though entirely ignorant that her makeup was truly ghastly. Smilingly, she asked, "Why did you call me down?" "Dad, I was just getting ready for bed. I am truly exhausted tonight." "How dare! Since you're exhausted, let us not talk about tonight's incident first. Go and rest." Ziven stood up, but he didn't leave. Rather, he walked toward Arielle. He was still as unruffled as ever, not a hint of displeasure to be found in his eyes. However, Arielle could sense a whiff of danger. Instinctively taking 2 steps back, she forced a smile. "Then, I'll be going upstairs. Please excuse me. In my previous life, he loathed my heavy makeup, so I later learned not to put on makeup to please him. To my surprise, everyone found me beautiful without makeup. Now that my face is caked with repulsive makeup, he'll definitely hate it." "No." Since he didn't say anything, Arielle turned around to leave. But just as she'd done so, she heard the man's deep voice sounding behind her. "I'll go with you." "He'll come with me." What does that mean? Is he saying that he wants to accompany me upstairs to rest? She'd rather believe that she was hearing things. But Ziven's next remark to Mike shattered all her hope. "I apologize that I lost control tonight and went too far with your daughter, leading to the engagement party being called off. He is taking full responsibility for what happened tonight." Mike was momentarily stunned before shock gripped him, followed by surprise and delight. Is young Master Ziven saying that there is still room for discussion about the engagement? Meanwhile, Willow and Scarlett were completely dumbfounded. Could it be that the man who was with her tonight was truly young Master Ziven? But how is that possible? How could he possibly stomach her with her repugnant makeup? Are his tastes that unique? At this time, Yol took over the conversation, clarifying, "Mr. Grace, young Master Ziven hopes that the engagement party can be held again 3 days later. Is that agreeable to you, Mr. Grace?" "Sure, of course. How could I possibly let go of such a powerful future son-in-law?" Only then did Ziven stare at Arielle's startled face, an odd glimmer flashing across his eyes. "I've tired you out tonight, so I'll now go upstairs and rest with you." He walked past her and took the lead up the stairs. "Do lead the way." His voice was placid, but it carried a slightly commanding tone that had Arielle following behind him up the stairs before she'd even gathered her wits about her. Uneasiness inundated her, but there were some things she didn't want to say in front of Mike, Willow, and Scarlett. As soon as they entered her room, Arielle closed the door, staring at the man who was stripping by the bed. She blurted anxiously, "Young Master Ziven, I know I was in the wrong tonight, so I'll apologize. Okay. Stealing his car, dumping him by the beach, and causing him to get drenched all seem to be capital crimes. But even so, the offender can still request for a quick death. No. With the way he is acting now, I simply can't figure out what he is trying to do. Also, he is undressing." Panic struck, and she backed away 2 steps even as she subconsciously hugged herself. "What are you doing?" Ziven simply flung his damp shirt aside. Then, he reached out and started unfastening the diamond-encrusted belt at his waist. "What exactly are you doing?" Accidentally catching a glimpse of his well-defined pectorals, Arielle's breathing abruptly sped up. She hastily retracted her gaze, not daring to look at his handsome countenance that had her wanting to throw herself at him as he stripped. "I am really sorry, young Master Ziven. I'll accept any punishment you dole out. But I know you don't really want to be engaged to me. He doesn't have the slightest affection for me. So I really have no idea how he had his wires crossed tonight that he actually did the deed with me. But it is clear as day that all this is merely an accidental mistake. As for Mistress Natasha, I'll visit her personally and apologize. I promise that I'll convince her that this has nothing to do with you." So, Ziven threw his belt onto his shirt before whirling around and staring right into her eyes. "You still want to break off the engagement?" "No, that is not it." Arielle understood that it'd be a humiliation for a proud man like Ziven if he were to be rejected by a woman. "Young Master Ziven, I just don't want you to be caught in a difficult position. After all, we're not at all suited." "I think," Ziven interrupted as he calmly headed to the bathroom, "we're rather suited, be it in terms of size or rhythm." Then, the bathroom door slammed shut, and the sound of running water promptly drifted out. Arielle was stunned for a whole 3 minutes before she finally realized what his remark earlier meant. Size and rhythm f*ck. Did the aloof and noble young Master Ziven truly say that? Why is he entirely different from the young Master Ziven I imagined? Her petite face flushed bright red. I simply can't believe that he actually uttered a lewd remark. Trepidation flooded her. Should I seize this opportunity to slip away while he takes a shower? But I don't know whether his men are outside. If I were to fail and end up being dragged back instead, things might end badly for me. What should I do? Should I make a run for it? After wavering for an indeterminate time, a knock suddenly sounded on the room door. It was Yol who came with Ziven's clothes. Her face crumpled. Arielle bemoaned, "Yol, I know I was in the wrong tonight. But what exactly is your young Master Ziven trying to do?" She loathed guessing someone else's thoughts, especially such an unfathomable man like Ziven. Yol was rather surprised at her overly familiar demeanor. "We've only seen each other twice. Yet she is acting as though we've known each other for a long time." Nonetheless, he suppressed his astonishment and replied respectfully, "Soon to be young Mistress Meyer. Young Master Ziven is merely afraid that you'll be lonely. So he specially came over to keep you company. If the engagement party hadn't been called off because of that incident, young Mistress Meyer would probably be staying in Meyer residence now. Furthermore, young Master Ziven and her had only gotten together tonight. So isn't it normal to have a repeat of it? But honestly speaking, I am not quite sure why young Master Ziven came to Grace Mansion after flying off his handle. After all, it is no easy task to decipher the boss' thoughts. Do take care of young Master Ziven, young Mistress Meyer, and please excuse me," he murmured. Yol. "Oh yes, young Mistress Meyer. Young Master Ziven said that if you want to do a runner again tonight, Tomorrow, all major online platforms in Berlin will be broadcasting the intimate recording of you both. What did you just say? Taken aback, Arielle's hands instantly went cold. I forgot to tell you, young Mistress Meyer, that there is a fully functional dashcam in young Master Ziven's car. While there isn't a video, the audio quality is superb. Superb. My *SS. Arielle almost cursed aloud. Is this a threat? I was indeed planning to run away from home tonight. But this shrewd man even thought this far ahead. Please excuse me, young Mistress Meyer. Do rest earlier with young Master Ziven. Waving a hand and leaving her a friendly gesture of goodbye, Yol then closed the door for them. While Arielle was still stewing in rage, a click sounded behind her, and the bathroom door swung open. Ziven then stepped out of the bathroom, his short hair still dripping water. He is sexy, alluring, and devastatingly handsome. He is simply a hunk. Arielle could seemingly hear herself swallowing. But never would she admit that she still had feelings for this man after living for 2 lifetimes. This is definitely an illusion. Young Master Ziven, if you're angry at my impudence tonight, I don't mind apologizing or even accepting a punishment. She hid behind the door, trying her best to sound calm. Ziven merely cast her a placid glance before walking over to the desk and sweeping his gaze around the room. Wine. Startlingly, Arielle abruptly remembered that he had a habit of drinking red wine every night before going to bed. She instinctively wanted to open the door to have a servant bring some wine over. But the moment her hand touched the doorknob, she immediately withdrew it. I am sorry, young Master Ziven, but we've got no wine here. He won't be able to sleep without any wine since he has insomnia. And his condition has never improved throughout the 5 years I've known him. How about I ask someone to drive you back to your villa? Young Master Ziven, I've got to drive this high and mighty man away quickly so that I can mull over my escape plan. However, Ziven didn't reply to that. Instead, he murmured, approved. What does that mean? Arielle was at a loss. What's approved? Since you're so eager to move into my villa, pack up for a bit. And we'll leave now. I don't want to move into your villa. What I said was to ask someone to drive him back. Did he not understand me or what? As she contemplated it, she finally realized that she'd been tricked by him. Regardless of whether I stay here or at his villa, I've got to stay by his side. But, young Master Ziven, you actually don't love me at all. So why? I never said that I love you. Ziven sat down on the edge of the bed. A surge of resentment welled up within Arielle. While that is the truth, must he be so blunt? Can't he be a bit more tactful in his speech? In that case, why do you still want to get engaged to me? Young Master Ziven, as I said, I don't mind explaining things to Mistress Natasha. Are you loosening the reins just so you keep a tighter hold? Ziven cocked an eyebrow, his patience nearing its end. Arielle Grace is taking off after using me, deliberately distancing yourself, and even suggesting calling off the engagement, your tactic of luring me in. Although we hadn't seen each other much, which time had she not done everything possible to stick to me like a bee to honey every single time we met? But since tonight, she has been different. Not only has she grown bolder, but her gaze also no longer followed me. Even at this moment, her aversion to me doesn't seem feigned. When did her acting skills improve so much? Yes. Flashing him a faint smile, Arielle nodded profusely. Young Master Ziven, everything I do is to draw closer to you. Or do you not like me this way? How could I have forgotten that he has an affinity for women who actively came onto him in my previous life? Did he just come here to look for me tonight because his self-esteem has suffered a blow? Is this his first time being dumped by a woman? As Ziven stared at her, the smile on her lips gradually stiffened. In front of him, she always felt that her thoughts were easily deduced. All of a sudden, he got to his feet, scaring her so much that she backed away in a panic. Subsequently, a thud sounded, and her back hit the door. What are you trying to do, young Master Ziven? She fixed her gaze on the man who walked over to her, her breathing chaotic and rapid even as her heart raced and blood coursed through her swiftly. His aura undoubtedly made women swoon. So no matter how hard she forced herself to remain calm, she couldn't truly stay unaffected. Out of the blue, there was pressure on her chin, and her face was lifted up by the man. At this, her brows creased. Young Master Ziven, our engagement is Grandma's wish. So there will certainly be an engagement party 3 days later. As you wish. Ziven's grip tightened, the pain causing a frown to mar her face at once. However, you'd best remember that if I, Ziven Meyer, is pleased, you can be the most enviable person in Balin. And conversely, if I am displeased, you'll be no more than an ant. Ziven's wintry voice and his vicious gaze had Arielle's breath catching, and she only snapped back to her senses after an eternity. By then, he'd left with his regal aura that garnered the admiration of all, and Arielle finally understood why he came here tonight. He came to assert his dominance. He wanted to tell me that no one can pick on me if he is pleased, even those of the Grace family. But if he is displeased and wants to destroy me, it is no different from killing an ant. He just wanted me to know that it is him who dictates my life. Ha! He is obviously still mad at me over the fact that I'd dumped him in the wild after using him to negate the effects of the drug. Why is this B** so petty? In my past life, I never knew that young Master Ziven was such a small-minded man. That night, she tossed and turned, but in the end, she couldn't figure out any way to delay or cancel the engagement party. After Arielle had washed up in the morning, even she herself couldn't help sighing when she gazed at herself in the mirror. My skin is fair, supple, exquisite, and flawless. I am truly blessed in the looks department. Even in my previous life, the calm and unruffled young Master Ziven was inexorably stunned when he saw my true countenance. In this lifetime, he has never seen my true countenance, so he abhors me completely to this day at least. Snagging a towel to pat the water droplets off her face, she then walked out of the bathroom. Unexpectedly, she was greeted by the sight of Willow sitting on the chair. The moment Willow saw her face, she fisted her hands. This B***tch is truly planning to use her countenance to seduce young Master Ziven. Fortunately, he has already abandoned her and left. Why are you here? Arielle didn't bother being amiable with her. In my previous life, not only did she cause the death of Felix Meyer, but she even hired someone to mow me down. However, she had other suspicions. Willow Grace hasn't that much capability alone. So who else is helping her? All smiles. Willow said gently. Arielle, I made this lotus seed soup myself and brought it here for you. She suppressed all her hatred and distaste toward her, leaving a gentle and kind sister before her. Last night, I only uttered those unpleasant words out of anger because I was misled by someone else's slander and thought that you fooled around with random men. You won't hold a grudge against me, will you? In my previous life, it was precisely such gentle words she used to constantly pull the wool over my eyes. I've been duped since young, actually having failed to see through her malicious intents for over 20 years. Alas, times have changed, and I am no longer the dumb Arielle Grace of the past. Taking the bowl from her, she brought it to her nose for a sniff. How fragrant! She held it up and down half the bowl in a single go. Willow's eyes lit up. This wretched girl has forgiven me. Sure enough, she is still that idiot from before, and I even suspected that she has smartened up. But it turns out that I read too much into things. Arielle, I heard that you don't want to be engaged to young Master Ziven. Is that true? It turned out that she actually drove young Master Ziven's car home last night, and young Master Ziven was only drenched because she dumped him on the beach. I can't understand what she is thinking, but perhaps this is my opportunity. Yup. Young Master Ziven is too fierce. So I don't want to get engaged to him anymore. Arielle blinked. Anticipation written all over her face. Willow. Why don't you tell Dad to make you his fiancé in my stead? All at once. Joy imbued Willow. Is this wretched girl serious? But Arielle. When it comes to such a matter, it only counts if you tell Dad personally and even inform young Master Ziven yourself that you don't want to marry him. Oh, is that so? Arielle put down the bowl and seemingly pondered upon it. A moment later, she suddenly dialed the extension line. Please ask my father to come up for a while. Young Master Ziven asked me to tell him something. A maid's voice drifted out of the other end of the phone. Understood. Young Lady Arielle. However, an inexplicable sense of uneasiness engulfed Willow. Arielle. I'll leave first since you've got something to tell Dad. What would Dad think if I were here? That won't work. I want to recommend you. So how could you be absent? Arielle clutched her arm, not allowing her to leave. Arielle. It is not appropriate for me to remain here. Listen to me and let go of me first. Damn her. If Dad sees me here later, he'll definitely suspect that I instigated her. However, Arielle just wouldn't release her arm. And Mike soon arrived. Thanks for listening to the Bravonovel audiobook. Welcome to download the Bravonovel app. Read the novel maybe and definitely online and get the latest updates.